Not so anonymous with a... No, I can't do that.
Like and subscribe.
Not so anonymous with Eve Eureka.
Jared, thank you for doing this, first of all. Thank you for letting us in your home.
Absolutely.
I typically like to start this thing off by introducing the person, and I've known Jared for quite a while. I knew Jared before Jared knew me. The first time I heard or seen you, I was in treatment in Stockton, and you were speaking at an event there, and your share grabbed me, right? And I was attracted to not only what you had to say, but the integrity of your words and how people were drawn to you after that, right? And I've been lucky enough that you were actually, from a half hour from Las Banas,
Right.
Merced. And so I've gotten to not only know you a bit through the years, but I've gotten to know other people that were touched by your life, guys that you've helped and different things. And so I see the ripple effect from what you're doing, right? And so as a guest, again, you're a person that was on the top of the list as far as who I want to grab to do this. So again, thank you for doing it.
Yeah, no problem.
So like we always started off, what's your clean date, Jared?
My clean date is October 1st, 2007. Interesting story. I got clean before that date, but when I got clean, I didn't know the months in order. I didn't know how many days were in a month. I didn't know any of that. So all I remember is at some point I wound up in treatment and they said, you got to know your clean date or else you ain't got one yet. And so I picked October 1st because I didn't know how many days were in September, but I got clean at the end of September, but I rounded up to October 1st.
Wow.
Just to be safe.
So that kind of just shows people where you were at.
Yeah. Emotionally, mentally, just totally jacked.
Right.
Out of balance.
And so what does that clean date mean to you? I mean,
well, I think two things. One thing is that it's the last day that it's the first day that I made a decision that I can stick by for a long time. I didn't have a good track record of making a decision and living by it. So for 15 years and a few months, I've made that decision pretty consecutively, might not have acted very clean,
right.
I might not have done all the right things, but I done that thing right, which in my life is like numero uno, we don't use. So, but beyond that, it's like I get to kind of reflect on the years. Like each year that passes, a lot happens when you're clean and trying to live in accordance with principles, And if a whole lot didn't happen in a year, that's something to look at.
Yeah.
So that's what my clean date means to me, I guess, is it's a discipline. And sometimes it's not always easy, you know? So.
And so we always like to, qualify ourselves, right? Because there's a lot of people watching this who probably don't know who either one of us are.
Right.
And the interesting dynamic that you have that I don't think we've had before with our guests is you grew up and you had parents in recovery, right? So like, what does that look like for you? I mean, like going back to your early years, I know your parents, you had to do something in order to be in recovery. They weren't always in recovery. Right. So like, what did things look like for Jared growing up? I mean,
when I was 7 years old, I was told I was adopted because my parents were habitual drug users. And, so the people that raised me ended up having their own substance use problems. So there was no escaping this lifestyle for me, right? Wow. My biological parents thought they were doing me a service by giving me a chance, by adopting me out. So I was raised, man. I was raised with two people, and those two people divorced and both remarried, one of them a few times. And so kind of just grew up. I was the kid at the skate park smoking cigarettes at 7 years old.
Wow.
The day after I found out I was adopted was the first time I ever used at 7 years old. And I didn't even like it, but it kept me busy. It kept me distracted from a lot of what I felt at the time was betrayal and being lied to and things like that. So, yeah, man, I was just a grimy kid. I was just a grimy little kid. My dad lived in the Bay Area and my mom lived in Tracy. My mom pretty much, my mom that adopted me, I got to do whatever I wanted under her roof. And my dad was super structured, militant even.
Wow.
So now I can look back and appreciate both of their efforts, right? But in the heat of the moment with a nasty divorce, with domestic violence, with gangs, with drugs, with denial of a lot of this stuff in the home, like we don't talk about it. Yeah, man, I was immersed in a lot of stuff that I would cringe if my children were involved with it at my age.
Yeah. And so that's like at 7 years old, you're just starting to get your foundation, right? So your
Right.
foundation's still kind of forming, and then it's shattered, right?
Right.
And then so from that point forward, you have a father that's super militant, mom, whatever goes. Like I'm assuming you want to hang out with where whatever goes, because that's
Yeah.
probably what's comfortable at that point, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to describe. You know what I mean? It was like, I love them both, but I hate them both.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that my dad's way of doing things, I just knew it made sense, but my mom's was funner.
Yeah.
And I was all about having fun. There was my freshman year, I think I went 3 total days to school. So the rest of the time I was actually living in a barn at my buddy's house, and I was making these decisions. I wasn't forced out of the house. My mom actually got charged with harboring an adolescent from school that I later had to amend by, paying off court fees and stuff like that, making all that right. But at the time, it was just insane. So what ended up happening when I was 15, I got in some real bad trouble, and a judge was looking at me, not knowing whether to send me to CYA or send me to my dad's. My dad was kind of at a loss. He was like, I don't really know what to do with this kid. And at that time, my biological family, who had been introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, was the whole reason why they came and visited me when I was 7. They brought me, I remember them bringing me a basketball hoop or a basketball or something like that.
And this is your biological parents.
Yeah. And for me, that just showed how much people didn't know about me. Because I've never been like, now I'm a Vikings fan and I like the Warriors, but the truth is I don't really respect team sports as much as I respect surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, things that are individualized.
Yeah.
I don't like to lose because of other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I get it.
So I like to lose because I didn't put enough effort in and I could do better next time. So when they brought me that basketball and I was into skateboarding, and basketball and football and stuff like that could be furthest from what I wanted to do, it just showed me that the people that gave me up not only gave me up, but they also don't have a clue
who you are,
who I am, or what I'm about. And it was really painful. You know what I mean? Just to be lied to by the people that were raising me, which they did amazing. You know what I mean? They were actually told they were never going to have children. So in the home that I was raised in, they actually fostered another child, my brother Dustin, who his parents had a drug problem. But my parents at that time were only guardianship over him, like godparent type situation. And then they brought me on full on adoption. And then 3 years later, they had my little brother Philip, naturally. So and then when my mom remarried, she remarried a man with like 6, 7 kids. You know, my dad remarried, had another kid, and then I'm introduced, you know, to my biological family, who I have two biological brothers that I had, who one was a football player and one was a basketball player. And I'm the punk rock Mohawk skateboarder that has a very common attitude of F you, right? And that's not very punk rock, so get away from me. But when I was 15, yeah, this judge was basically saying, I don't know what to do with you. And my biological family, who had exposure to 12-step recovery and participating and going to school and becoming, you know, educated in treatment efforts. And they showed up and said, you know, if you'll allow it, Judge, we'd love an opportunity to help him at least graduate high school.
Wow.
And the judge, like most judges do, oh, it's out of county? Yeah, go with them. Right. They wanted me out of county. They did not want me in San Joaquin County. So I went to Merced, where so I literally moved in with my biological family, who I barely knew. And I had, you know, it was so strange, you know, because when I went on the drive, I kept telling myself, because I was involved with gang activity, I was involved in, you know, hustling. We would do all kinds. I'm telling you, like, heavy crime, serious crime before the age of 15. And then when I got to Merced, people were like, oh, you're a bad. I'm like, I've calmed down a lot out here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm chill now. This ain't nothing. And so, but when I went out there, I was like, man, this is what because I had moments where I would sit quietly and say, like, man, I got to get my shit together, you know? I just wish somebody would show me unconditional love, like, just believe in me.
Yeah.
And they did. And when it did happen, I said, this is my shot. But the second I landed, I was like, where's it at? And I kept rolling on that basis. And so that's how I got really involved with my bio family, you know. And so I have 6 parents.
Wow, that's a lot.
You know, I have 6 parents, and I got to keep up with Christmas with each of them. And it's a struggle sometimes, because sometimes I'm like, just leave me alone. But the truth is, I'm very blessed. You know, the God of my understanding has made it very clear that I have significant reason to be involved in each one of my family members' lives. That doesn't mean that I'm immersed in every single person's life, you know what I mean? It just means that whatever purpose I'm meant to play in their life, I'm much more capable of doing it now that I'm clean than I ever was when I was loaded. And by the end of my using, no one believed that I was going to be able to be somebody that can be called a brother or a son. You know, I was a ghost. Pretty much.
And so, like, you have like this whole range of time between 7 and 15 to where you're pretty much just out there running and gunning, just doing whatever.
Wild.
Yeah. And so then you're introduced to this, like, kind of, I got to imagine that your biological parents at this time have some cohesiveness and some structure. And so you talk about having moments where it's like, oh, this is what I needed. But at the same time, I got to imagine being wired a certain way, like you didn't automatically go, cool, now my life's good, now I'm on cruise control, right? I mean, what does that look like for you at 15?
15 is a strange age to begin with, let alone having a drug problem, an abandonment issue or two, some serious risky behavior, anything from promiscuity to IV drug use, to gang involvement, things like that. I thought I was a gang member. Let's just put it that way. And I wasn't, but I liked the idea that if I can just be crazy enough and down enough and like roll hard enough with these dudes, they'll accept me, you know? And then at 15, moving in with these squares, these clowns, you know what I mean? My mom had like a car that had like a teardrop thing on the rearview mirror, and I was like, what is that? And she's like, it's Jesus's teardrop. And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, this isn't the real world. Like, by the time I was 10 years old, I saw dead bodies in bushes. from ODing. You know what I mean? And I subscribe to getting used to that lifestyle, and I never, this is something that I'm currently kind of trying to navigate and appreciate, is I spent a large part of my life saying it's okay when shit wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Total codependent move, right? So, and now I'm trying to say it's not okay without putting pressure on people that, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
made it not okay. And this goes for everybody, because I'll tell you what, man, being a drug addict and trying to get clean, you are not going to have short of people telling you that you're not doing things right.
Yeah.
And they're not going to have reservation to let you know. But there's certain things that happen while I was growing up that I've always said I understood, and it's okay, when I never understood, and I'm realizing now that it was never okay. So, and that's not to say that my parents in recovery did all well and my parents that adopted me did all bad. That's not. Everybody's got an asset list and a defect list.
Yeah.
And we're all playing the part of trying to just do the best we can. And I can appreciate that. But as a kid, I never learned to say, no, that's not okay. I never learned how to say how I felt. A lot of that stuff stems from the divorce and being, counseled by a psychologist telling me none of this stuff is going to leave this session room. And then it's brought up the next week in court. So I immediately said, okay, don't ever tell the truth to anyone. Look at how bad this hurt your mom, saying that there's, drug addicts coming in and out of the house over there. Look at how evilly happy my dad looks because he finally got her on one, but they still let me stay with my mom. You know what I mean? So it's like, it was, now I can see that it was all really purposeful, but with my parents that I moved in with, they never told me that I needed to go to meetings. They never told me any of that stuff. Eventually they did when I became an adult, right? Yeah. But when I was a youth, today, if any one of my children experiment with drugs, and I think it's anything more than experiment, I'm like, why don't we go to a NA meeting? And they'll ask me, what am I supposed to say? You're not supposed to say nothing. You're supposed to listen.
Yeah.
Listen and listen for, what you might be missing. And if you see or find something, then participate to whatever degree you're comfortable. You know what I mean? But when I was growing up, it was always fast. It was always fast. Even when it was slow in the real world, like I moved out to Merced, and I'm used to like hanging out in Oakland, Hayward, some rough spots where you just simply don't do certain things. And I moved out to little old Merced, and people like rubberneck and just stare at you walking down the street. And so I'm like flagging down old people, like, you want to fight, staring at me like that, and I'm just not used to the rural country retirement community that Merced used to be. It ain't like that no more. Now they got a university and all kinds of stuff. But when I moved out there, it was a difficult transition. But the gangs and the drugs and all that, I was fine with.
So I got to imagine, so you experienced so much at that young age, so much trauma, and the things that you thought were normal, like you were describing, they aren't so normal, right? And then you get shot out to Merced at 15, and you have a head full of just insanity, and you're living with these people in recovery. I have to imagine at some point that insanity, like you probably have the opportunity to be the big fish in the small pond, right? And I mean, I got to imagine that's kind of attractive to somebody that's raised around all this craziness, and now you have your opportunity to do whatever you want, right? I mean, I don't know what that looks like. I'm trying to
It's
envision.
very complicated, dude.
It sounds complicated. I'm kind of confused talking to you. There's so much to unpack there.
It's that I moved from Tracy, California, where I got to do whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted to. At some point, I stopped even going to my dad's house because he had structure and rules, and I didn't want to have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And with my mom, I can basically stay gone for months at a time and just get high and party all the time. And then, looking up at a judge, he says, go live with these people, get out of my county. And these people do. They have structure. And I did pretty good. I actually showed up to school, continuation school, right? I showed up to school. I did my best to manipulate pregnant girls at the continuation school to do my credit books so I can graduate. I did graduate, right? But I didn't even know how to read.
Wow.
I didn't know the months in order. I didn't know some of the things that most people take for granted. You know what I mean? I used to lie to people and say, I do wear glasses, but these glasses are not for reading. They're for driving. So I can see exit signs and not have to loop around, right? But I used to hit county jail and say, hey, can you read my court document? I don't have my glasses. But the truth was, I just never learned how to read. Really read. You know what I mean? So, but growing up in the culture changed from doing whatever I want, how I want, to, so there was like a 50-50 exchange there. Like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I want because I'm punk rock and that's just the way it is. But I'm also going to subscribe to like, okay, these people have rules. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be coming in all hours of the night. My mom was a hound for drug use. Every time I used drugs before she picked me up, she knew. She said, you smell funny. You smoking weed? No, Mom. And she knew. She's a drug counselor. She's been sponsoring people and doing this thing for 25 plus years. So it was difficult, man. And the truth is, because of the, if you want to call it trauma or just life experience, however you want to put it, because of that, I subscribe to flying beneath the radar. Don't focus on me, right? Yeah. Don't ask me deep personal questions. Don't get close to me. You're just going to hurt me. I always kept people at a healthy distance, except for people I was taking full advantage of.
Yeah,
of
you
course,
keep
right?
Close.
I'm keeping them real intimate, let me see your food stamp card, kind of thing. But yeah, and so by the time I turned 18, my mom booted me quick because I was using in her house with her clients from the treatment program she was working at. My first treatment center was, I think, at 16, right after I moved in with them, and, RAFT, Recovery Assistance for Teens. And they told me, but it was weird because my mom worked at that agency. So I'm in a counseling office and this lady's saying, everything you say in here is confidential.
Again.
Here we go again.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing an event right there that I'm sure goes to my mom's office. And I'm sure this place is bugged, paranoid, tripping. I don't trust nobody. I barely trust myself. And so, yeah, man, it was fast. It was all so fast, and it's hard to even recollect what even happened. I was so loaded the day I graduated high school, which everyone was so proud of me for. But I didn't do anything. I showed up.
Yeah.
I showed up and I, flirted with a pregnant girl and said, can you do this credit book for me?
Well, and you know what? It's easy for me to see why trust wasn't an easy thing for you, right? When it's been broken so many times in your formative years, right? And so here you're around some people that are actually have some answers for the things that you're dealing with, but again, you're put in that same situation. And
Can't trust it.
And people are trying their hardest to the best they know to help you. But at the same time, they're dealing with somebody that has some understandable issues. These aren't fabricated issues that you're making up in your head. There's a lot of stuff going on.
And you got to appreciate too, because of the change of hands, the people that are responsible for kind of collateraling that information, like the people that adopted me to my biological family, I seriously doubt that they were talking.
Yeah.
Both of the people that adopted me, I'm sure felt some form of shame that they couldn't manage the kid that they adopted. And now they have to give it back. Like my foster dad had to pay the people that put me up for adoption child support.
Wow.
So there was a lot of other stuff beyond what I understood happening. But that's my point though, is like there isn't clear, and I'm not communicating anything other than please stop looking at me so that I can do whatever it is I want to do.
Yeah.
It didn't take long. 16 years old, I'm hanging out with 27-year-olds at the skate park doing cocaine and smoking weed.
Yeah. When it sounds like I could hear from the way you're talking about you take account for these things today. Like, these are my choices.
Right.
But at that time, it's just kind of the way things were. At 7 years old, right, dealing with what you were dealing with, being the kid smoking cigarettes at the skate park, that just seems like the natural course of things. Like, this is my life. This is what I'm going to be doing. So for people trying to help you, it's got to be like banging their head against the wall, right? I mean,
and the only thing that I felt like I was good at most of my childhood was skateboarding and being with women.
Yeah.
That's it. I got exposed to sex real early, and I found great joy in it.
Yeah.
Still do. It's fun. You know what I mean? But it's risky. You know what I mean? And but that's all that I really had. I didn't think I was a good friend. I didn't think that I was a good son. But I was good as shit at skateboarding. I won skateboard competitions. You know what I mean? Like, that's the cool thing, is that my family did support that effort, and they knew that that was important to me. And so they would go to my skate competitions, and they would see, and they would support me going to hang out with, the skate team or whatever, and practicing for the competition or going to do demos. Yeah, man. I mean, I think, and now in hindsight, I understand a little bit. Let's put it this way. I don't have to understand.
Yeah.
I don't have to understand. I could just try and accept and move forward. But I do have a lot of recent wondering of, like, why did I not cry at my aunt's funeral before I even started using drugs? I was extremely torn by that. She was like the only one I consider. Her and her daughters, Lori, were the only people that I felt truly loved me unconditionally and stood up for me in front of my dad that adopted me.
Yeah.
Because I was ADHD, off the hook, wild, rambunctious, crazy, and my dad would be on my helmet always. And he never really talked. He would just grab me by the back of my neck and straighten me out, and Lori would say things like, hey, he's just a kid. I felt safe with her. And so when she died from cancer, I was like, man, there goes one of like 2 or 3 people that I believe really care about me without expectation, without, and now I can articulate that. Then I couldn't articulate that. And now I'm asking myself, like, why didn't I cry? Or why didn't I stand up in court and say something? Why did I not, tell my parents that, I didn't appreciate some of the things that they had going on when I was little? Why didn't I tell somebody just today that offended me, hey, please don't do that around me, that offends me? Why am I so quick to let things slide? And it all stems from just not wanting to create waves for 2 reasons, I think. One is, don't look at me. I'm doing some shit on the side that I don't want nobody to know about anyway. Or just the awkward, confrontation-ish type of environments. I didn't want it. I was scared to death. And I still have a lot of fear around being, if I ask you, would you still love me if I've done these horrible things? I'm afraid that somebody that I think should love me would say no.
Right.
Not because of what anyone has said, but because of the way things have gone.
Even though probably time and time again, that's been proven false.
Wrong.
Right.
So now I'm a lot better at doing this, but I'm still new at it. And I'm really trying to identify where is the hesitation on my part and why do I make things so extreme?
Yeah.
Right. 2 to a 10 quick. So
I think, and I think that's all a personality trait of people that suffer with this disease, right? That we identify in ourselves. So talking, because you've seen a lot of things, right? Like you've listed, just breezed over probably 24 things that could be any one person's rock bottom, as to say, right?
Oh, that's not even including the suicide attempts or the arrests or the, inside of the drug culture or gang culture, there is a huge internal issue of people ratting on people. And there's a certain code that if you don't live by that, you can get, you can face really harsh punishment. Right. And so if you get clean you look like a snitch
Yeah.
in those circles. They say, oh, he's talking all honest at the meeting. What happens if he starts talking about what he did with me honestly?
Right.
Right. And so, but yeah, man, I literally tried to commit suicide because I took a hit, felt nothing. I took another hit, I felt nothing. And I stabbed myself in the stomach.
Wow.
Because I wasn't able to get high anymore. My tolerance had grown so much. And yeah, man.
So like talking about that, since you were so open talking about it, like at that point, was it just like, I want to feel something, or is it like, I just want this to all be over? Is that like the point of misery where it was just, this is too much and I'm done, or a cry for help? I don't know.
You know, and I've always felt like I needed to find a reason why.
Yeah.
Or what was going on at that time. And I've always kind of said my best thinking is that I couldn't get high. I couldn't run to the one thing that I've leaned on for so long for comfort. And I just gave up. But recently I watched an interview with Absol. I'm really into hip hop music. And he just did an album, and he talks about how he had a suicide attempt where he totally blacked out. And I think I identify with that. I really don't remember what happened after I grabbed the knife. I just remember coming to on Bear Creek, walking, and my whole right-hand side of my body is covered in blood.
Wow.
And then I, woke up in the hospital, escaped the hospital. My buddy had saw me on Bear Creek and knocked me out to get me to the hospital. I wasn't going. I was ready to die. Once I had seen what I did, I was like, well, whatever. We'll be done. This is enough. Today, I haven't had a drug problem in 15 years.
Yeah.
But I believe for me, the disease of addiction today is trying to navigate personal private pain. That is the way the disease expresses itself most in my life, is it attaches itself to my grief or my low self-esteem or my impatience, intolerance, indifference, judgments, all these different things. And it just tries to find little tiny ways to find a cut inside of my spirit and just infest it, throw everything at it. Right. And so I think that I may have just blacked out and just did it. But there was another time I was so enraged and both times I was coming down off drugs, right? Yeah. Nobody's making much sense when they're coming down off drugs, right? And the other time was trying to commit suicide by cop, and at that time I remember everything. And I just remember being completely fed up. I did not want to deal with the effects of my life.
So the second attempt, is that like the pivot point for you?
No, not even close. Probably a year and a half later, I went and tried to get clean in Modesto at the lady that adopted me, my mom's house. And they drink there and stuff, and everything's okay over there smoking weed. And I couldn't even smoke weed anymore. I was so shot out from all the other drugs that I was using that I couldn't do anything. So I just started drinking. And long story short is I blacked out a few times, tried to fight my stepdad, all kinds of craziness. And one day, because my biological mom said, hey, man, you can come stay with us and we can help you, but you got to be clean. You got to go to meetings if you're going to stay here.
And at that point, you were out of that household. They had enough.
At 18, they kind of booted me, and I was doing my thing. And so at 21 years old, I call my biological mom and dad and tell them, hey, things ain't really working out over here. One of my family members was like a pimp and a drug dealer, and like he would take me, like I couldn't even, he would give me, because I was so depressed and so withdrawn, that he would try to give me a prostitute to try and cheer me up. And I couldn't even have sex.
Right.
I was so torn up. And that's when I really noticed there was a problem. I was like, I can't even have sex. This is a huge problem, just a huge deficit. Like I felt like a deficit. I felt like a negative. There was nothing good. I had a lot of skateboarding opportunities along the way that I kind of shit on because of drugs. And so that community is like a small town. They all talk to each other. Hey, Jared's shot out. Don't give him no flow. Don't give him no products. He's just going to try and flip it for dope, blah, blah, blah. And long story short is my parents said, hey, why don't we go to this picnic thing? And she takes me to a 12-step picnic thing, right? And that was my first encounter with 12-step recovery.
Wow.
And I got a lot of hugs, and I got a lot of, it's nice to meet you. Your mom and dad are good people. Somebody even told me, you know, what was your drug of choice? And I had told them, thinking I was cool for saying it, because I kind of got hip to it. You know, living on the streets and participating with gangs and stuff, you get sharp quick.
Yeah.
So you get the flow of a community or an environment, whether that's going to jail or going to a trap house or going to the Bay Area, or, you know what I mean? You just get the vibe that you got to act accordingly, depending on where you're at. And so this guy was like, you know, what was your drug of choice? I had never even heard drug of choice up until that point.
They were all a good
And the
choice.
truth is, I didn't have a choice. Yeah. Whatever you had was my favorite.
Right.
And if it's free, I want more.
Yeah.
You know? But he had asked me that, and I had told him a substance, and he had said, it doesn't even effing matter. And I was, in my head, I was so confused, because I was like,
he was
you
ready
trying
for
to
you.
punk me, bro?
Yeah.
Why would you ask me what it is if it doesn't matter, right? But years later, I understand that it's my reaction to drugs that makes me an addict,
Yes.
not the drugs themselves, right? Is there physical tolerance and like other things like that going on? For sure. I'm not going to deny that. But I understand today that I have a spiritual disease. Right. And that it can show up in all kinds of different ways. But yeah, my bottom was straight up. I was trying to do recovery at my mom's house, pretending to be clean. I was sneaking, you know, little bits here and there. And I had told my parents that I was going to help do some work when I really wasn't. I was just going to go, you know, and I had a key tag. I had my dad's key tag that was attached to his house key, and I was shotgunning beers. And because I'm somewhat clean for a little while and drinking too much, I'm heavy. My clothes don't fit me anymore, so I'm lifting up the shotgun, and my shirt comes up, and my buddy sees my key tag, my dad's key tag, and it says, you know, says what it says. It indicates that somebody has been off drugs for a period of length of time, right?
Yeah.
And he goes, "You're a fucking liar, bro. Look at you." And I never got loaded again.
Wow.
I tried. So this guy, God bless Zach, right? Zach was a friend of mine from back in the day, and he's actually, I don't know if he's clean or not right now, but he's the one that took me to the hospital when I tried to kill myself. He's the last person I used drugs with. He's a good friend of mine. We used to cliff dive together, have loads of fun. Homeless, he would take me in, try and help me out, blah, blah, blah. But he said that, and we drank a couple 30 packs between me and him. I felt nothing. He, at that time, he didn't really seem like an addict, at least not like me. And so every week, every payday, he would buy, because his girl was pregnant, and he would buy himself a bottle of, you know, booze, and he would buy her one for when she was done with her pregnancy. They could have a big party and they could drink, you know.
Yeah.
I stole a bunch of booze, drank all that, couldn't feel nothing. Then I left his house and went to some people's house that I knew had some stronger stuff. And every single person that was willing to creep their head through the window or the eye hole of the door, you know, drug dealers, had told me, get off my property or I'm calling the police. Drug dealers told me that they're going to call police to their own house because they did not want me there. I was a maniac. Like when I stabbed myself, I did that in front of a group of people, right? I've pointed loaded guns at people in a just a maniac mode. I've pointed guns at myself in front of people and said, leave all the shit here or I'll kill myself in your house. Like crazy stuff. And so nobody gave me nothing. And so I went back to his house and I fell asleep in his car. I didn't even have the courage to knock on the door, you know. And then in the morning he saw me and he said, you know, I'm taking you home, bro. You're pathetic. And I said, can we get loaded first? Right. And we did some stuff and I felt nothing still. So I get to my parents' house. They're under the impression, you know, that I should have been back the day before. And I'm thinking, oh shit, man, and I get there and no one's there. And I'm like, oh my God, they're at the police station. They're looking for me. They're scared. I'm in big trouble, right? And I go inside. I try to wash off all the booze and drugs, whatever I can get my hands on. And I play possum in my own bed with no one in the house, right? Fearful of what they're going to come home and say when they've been looking for me in alleys and looking for me at the police station and county jail. And when they got home, they were laughing. They were enjoying life without the use of drugs, clean and free in society. They had just gotten back from an NA dance. And in that moment, I realized that I would not mean shit to anyone except, the only reason why I would be brought up in a conversation is what not to do. And that was my bottom.
Wow.
The next morning, trying to be all principled, I walked down and said, I need more help than you can give me, So I went and signed up for treatment. And, I stayed clean. I stayed clean for 17 days before I got into treatment. I thought I only really needed 3 months in treatment, but I stayed the 6 months because a sponsor that I had told me, how many things have you completed all the way? So I stayed the extra 3 months. My sister was murdered by an alumni of that facility while I was there, which was tough, right? Yeah, man. Just, it literally went from like feeling like a deficit, like less than a deficit, I really like blues music because it reminds me of like, man, I feel like I was born by the river and left in a,
Yeah. Well, I can see that.
I felt like I didn't, I felt so less important that I had to make such a mess just to be recognized,
Right.
without even trying to, I did. And so, but it's so amazing that after I got clean for real, it just took off, bro. It just went totally the opposite direction. And so I do sometimes feel like less important and stuff like that, but humility says you're not important all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you were, then it wouldn't even mean anything for when you were.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what got me to surrender. I had been exposed to 12-step recovery at that point for about a year and a half. But I was collecting key tags that I did not earn. I was, trying to control meetings that I had no business talking in. Yeah, man.
Yeah, there's so many similarities, and I remember being, I also was at a 6-month treatment facility, right? And I had it 4 months in my opinion. And my counselor told me the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, how do you expect to stay clean if you can't finish the first thing that you're doing clean, right? And
Right.
And those little challenges for me, I think, are part of my foundation where I have that attitude as well that I'm not going to pick up nothing no matter fucking what happens, right?
Yeah.
And so for you, early in recovery, treatment facility, like what does that look like for you? Because you've been exposed to it. At that point, were you like all in, like I'm open to this, this is going to be my life?
At that time, and much more now, I realized that treatment was a safe environment for me to get clean.
Yeah.
It was not going to be, I do not wake up and, well, I do wake up and make my bed, but I do not do pride days on Saturdays.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? I don't do the things that the treatment center taught me to do. I'm grateful for the treatment center teaching me those things, but they gave me an environment to fully focus on my recovery. So by the time I left that treatment facility, I was on step 4. I had thoroughly worked steps 1, 2, and 3 with a sponsor and read, I just learned, I was allowed to just learn so much and take it in however it came. I felt very spoiled now that I'm playing on the recovery team. My parents have a much more deeper meaning to me.
Yeah.
Right. Realizing that my mom had bought me all these recovery books for when I was ready. I didn't even know my mom cared. Right. Them, just little things like, and it was all like back and forth. Cause I was like, oh man, my mom's buying me cigarettes every day. And then by like before month 3, she was like, I can't afford to buy you cigarettes every day. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. It was tough, dude. A lot of things. I soaked up a lot of things. But the reason why I was spoiled is because my parents went to conventions. They went to campouts. They went to, you know, all kinds of stuff far and wide. And they always said, you have a seat. You always have a seat when we go to these things, right? I wish I would have got clean a couple years before with the World Convention in Hawaii. You know what I mean? But I feel very fortunate that I get the autonomy of knowing that my family is in recovery, but it's their recovery, right? My mom's is my mom's, my dad's is my dad's, mine is mine. It might be similar in a lot of the ways, but even with me and my mom, we don't have a typical mother-son relationship like I have with my mom that adopted me. It's different.
Yeah.
And it's okay that it's different. You know what I mean? But I was spoiled rotten, man. If I called my mom and said, hey, this newcomer just got to the treatment center. He needs a basic text. Go get me one. She would go get me one. And we give it, you know? And I just dove right in, bro. My whole concept was, I'm going to give this thing a cold, hard shot, my very best effort.
Yeah.
And because of things like, I have a different mentality with effort because of skateboarding. When you want to grind down, say, 15 stair handrails and land it just right, you're never going to do it the first time. You're going to eat shit, probably a lot more than you ever land it. And even if you landed a certain way, you might not like the way your body was positioned or how it looked on camera. So you have to do it just right. So I had this idea of perfectionism, which is not a good idea. You know, Now I understand that our best effort is enough. Right. But it did aid me in saying, like, I want to practice this program so that in a year I can say this shit don't work and I can go back to doing whatever I was doing. But within 3 months, I saw it. You know what I mean? Within a couple days. I mean, when I signed up for treatment, I went to a meeting that night and said, I don't think I can stay clean waiting for them to tell me a bed's open. And a guy in the meeting took me to work with him every single day to keep me busy against his work's policies, pumping concrete. Like, you have to have certain insurance. You know, if I got hurt on the job site with this dude, I could have got him fired. But he said, you know, fuck that noise.
Right.
You're a kid that wants to stay clean. I want to support that shit. And just cool shit, man. His name's Rudy. God bless Rudy. You know, he took me to work with him every single day. So I didn't even have the energy to go get loaded after. Pumping concrete ain't no punk shit.
Yeah.
It's hard to, and he had me empty him out and clean him out, you know. But I get home, have just enough energy to call somebody, say, can you give me a ride to a meeting? Get to a meeting, go home, you know. And I remember at some point I told him, hey, am I ever going to get paid? He's like, why? What do you need money for? Money's just dope coupons.
Yeah.
What do you need money for? What is it that you need? I was like, well, I'm out of cigarettes. I want a soda. You know, at that time they didn't have energy drinks, but they had Volt. I remember Volt was my thing. It was like the energy drink, Mountain Dew type thing. And he said, don't worry, I'll hook you up. And the next day he got me like a 12-pack of Volts and a carton of cigarettes. He said, what do you need money for now? I said, fine, dude, whatever.
Right.
But long story short is, like, I didn't have any money. I had a $500 voucher from the county because of my suicide attempt with drug use that they submitted for my entry fee into the treatment center. And they were telling me every single month for 6 months, how are you going to pay rent? How are you going to pay your bill? How are you going to pay your bill? And I tell them, money is a dope coupon. I cannot make money. And, you know, and they supported me. And I made a contract with them around month 4 that I would pay back everything. As soon as I was done for fully focusing on my treatment, that I would pay whatever I could towards that treatment center until it took me 7 years to pay off that debt. And it was well worth it. You know what I mean? And, but just little stuff like that. Like, I stayed clean 17 days before I went into treatment because of Rudy.
Yeah. And so the program basically provides you everything you need.
Everything.
And did that come from basically just showing up and saying, hey, my name's Jared and I need some help, right? Was that kind of the scenario?
I think so. But I know that from my experience with sponsoring other men, showing up is simply not enough.
Yeah.
Showing up is half. Then you have to start making a commitment to participate. So not only do we ask for help, we give help. So we do what we can. And I learned that very on. Service work, for me, I always have a service commitment. There's been times where I said I'm burnt out, but that means I'm not going to do 4 service commitments. I'm going to do 1. And I've been staying pretty true to that. But it's a selfish disease.
Yeah.
It's a taking thing. And so when I remember when I got done with the 3rd step, my sponsor at the time said, people had been starting to ask me to sponsor them by step 3 because I'm guessing because I was so, look, I'm not enthusiastic about recovery because it's cool. I'm because the shit saves my life every day. And it makes more than saving my life. It gives me a purpose to live. It gave me a reason. And it still gives me a reason. So, but I've been told I don't do it for this reason, that I'm very enthusiastic and it's attractive. Great. Whatever. That's my shit. That's just me being myself. And people would ask me, can you sponsor me? I'd be like, yeah. I don't think I can sponsor people. I'm only steps 3, right? And I called my sponsor and he told me early on, he said, how selfish of you. That might have been the only time somebody asked for help and you denied them that quick for selfish reasons. He said, why did you tell him no? I was like, well, I don't want to do something that I'm not ready for. Who said you're not ready? I was like, well, I don't feel ready. He's like, were you ready to get clean? Right? Were you ready to go to treatment? Were you ready to do any? And this whole idea of, often it's said in meetings and stuff, life showed up. And I don't believe in that at all. Life's always been here. Yeah. You showed up. Exactly. Welcome. Come on in. There's a lot of shit to do, right? Early on, people said certain things that I really gravitated to. There's this guy, and he said, Jared, you owe a debt to life. You have been absent. And you owe a debt to pain. You owe a debt to gratification, to pride. You owe a certain level of debt to do things that deserve pride. And you deserve to learn how to read. You deserve to, and to work with people that don't know how to read, right? And to help. Stop taking all the time, So it was just fascinating, not in terms of like the information, but letting the information transform my thinking and the way that I live it was amazing. It still is amazing. It's just I'm a little bit more used to it now.
Yeah.
So I'm like settled into it. It's a lifestyle now. I still get very excited about it, but not as much as I did. I mean, I would say that I was just gung-ho nonstop for the first 7 to 8 years. I went to the treatment center I graduated from every single day for the first 5 years clean. For the first probably 6 years clean, I went to a meeting every single day. I just did because it works, bro.
Yeah.
That's how I looked at it. I was like, holy shit, it works. Right. Look at how well it's working. Like, I'm unemployable. I got a job. I've never been fired since I've been clean. I've only gotten better and better jobs. And I've always, with any job that I took, I always said to myself, I can't have jobs that make me. I have to have jobs that I make my recovery primary and then I work. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like if a job's going to get in the way of me going to meetings, it's not a job that I want. And I even tried my hand at drug counseling, and I simply stopped doing drug counseling goals to become a drug counselor because I felt at a certain point that it was more beneficial to an addict to get him in my car, get him a coffee and give him a cigarette and have a conversation than it was to do a treatment plan. And I still believe in that. Not for everybody.
Yeah.
But for it was too close to comfort. And when the policies of HIPAA and things like that, which are real things and they are important. And I'm still in, I have to abide by HIPAA when I'm on the clock and things that concern my job. But it just didn't make sense to me that I was going to knowingly get a job where I had to annex newcomers.
Yeah. With the therapeutic value of
right.
one addict helping another.
I couldn't do it.
And that's the thing is there's certain things that will stop you. So I want to touch on something before it evades me. So 7-year-old kid smoking cigarettes at the skate park by himself, an outsider's perspective that sees this kid's got no fucking chance.
None.
Right? From that point to where you're at today, and we haven't even touched on really where you're at today and what you're doing. But does it blow your mind that you've made it to where you're, or do you even look back and give yourself credit from, and I know, our higher power, saves us, right? A lot of people believe that, but do you ever sit back and give yourself credit from that to where you're at now, and what that means to people that may see this and say, I can make it too, right?
Rarely. I'm not very good at giving myself credit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And when I have, it's usually a lot more. It's not so grandiose. Right. I don't have these giant moments of clarity where I look back. Like, I just got off the phone with my mom the other day, and my mom's, struggling with some stuff. And I got to tell my mom, there's nothing you can do about it. I love you.
Yeah.
I will not engage in the mess that is going on in your life unless it's talking about making it better. But I love you. And I had to hurry up and get off that phone call because my son almost slipped into the canal where we were fishing, right? Yeah. And so, but I said, hey, Mom, I got to go. My kid's about to fall in the aqueduct, which is very dangerous. And so she said, all right, I love you. And I got off the phone, and then things kind of quieted down. We were fishing, and I just kind of thought, like, that's fucking cool, dude. Because she's probably been one of the only people that were just, no matter what I did, she loved me. Yeah. She just loved me. She would scold me and give me a talking to and stuff like that. But she knew I was having sex at an early age. She encouraged safe sex. She knew I was smoking cigarettes. She knew I was doing other stuff. She knew I knew that she was doing other stuff. But it's kind of like an unspoken respect that we always had. But we never really needed to really talk about anything because we both kind of understand that she shit the bed in her way. I shit the bed in my way. But now we're on different ways. We're doing different things now. And I look at how, like, for me, it's not so important about what has happened. It's about what is happening and how I try and practice this way of life. And so lately it's been a big deal that I let people know that I love them and that I care about them, and that it would, it bothers me right now that there's people in my journal that I'm writing down that I need to call this person and I haven't called them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, but I have, and that's part of the reason why I want to write a book. You know what I mean? To really get a full scale look at, like, cause I know what I've been given in this life is it's going to be a lot of value to people. And my brain is too wild to really articulate it.
Yeah.
I need to get it down on paper, just like with step work. I can talk about, powerlessness all day, but what really helps me is when I'm in the moment with my kid and I'm not recognizing my powerlessness and I'm trying to control, manipulate, fear monger, I'm just out here. And then in the moment, I can step back and be like, I'm powerless over this child. Why don't you just tell him you love him?
Yeah.
And that a simple discipline. Hey, you're not going to do that in my house. Now I have to, give you this consequence to remind you, right? And it doesn't have to be more than that. But I love you. No matter what, how angry I get, how angry you get, I love you, right? That only comes from a place from where I surrendered and I said, I'm powerless. If I wasn't powerless, no wonder I'm trying to control and orchestrate everybody to live how I want them to live, So yeah, I definitely want to write a book so I could look at the whole thing, because people have told me, like, that is amazing. Your parents are in recovery. They adopted you out. They got you back, all this stuff. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But there's a lot more to it too. You know what I mean? There's stuff, this stuff has legs and it's got to be worked on. It's not, sometimes a child is a blessing. and most children become a nightmare
Yeah.
at one point or another, right? So it's like it's like everything has its, you know, equal and its opposite.
Yeah.
How do I find the even flow? Harmony has been important to me in the last year or so, and I've struggled with finding it and staying in that place. But I think there is a lot of value, but I'm kind of hard on myself.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
can
hard
see
for me
that.
it's hard for me to appreciate it all the time. Prayer and meditation help me do that. You know, I got a 45-minute commute both to and from work where I get to kind of do that. So I guess I do. I don't think about it like that. I think about like, you know, today's so-and-so's clean day. I'm very thinking about all the things that I've had with that person, that clean day person, you know, how special they are to me. I want to call them and let them know, you know, stuff like that.
Well, that's what like this experiment that we're doing with this podcast is like changing my perspective on a lot of things, right? And when people reach out and they say thank you for something, right?
Yeah.
Or when they compliment me, it took me a long time to accept a compliment, right? And think I'm deserving of that compliment.
Right.
Where I see it in myself is like when somebody that's not doing what we're doing in the program and they call me and reach out for help, and 7 years ago they probably wouldn't have, they'd been like, fuck this guy, right? And all of a sudden that's shifted, and I give myself a little bit of credit, you know. And it's hard for me because I see you were doing this thing before me, and I'm like, this guy's awesome. If I could strive to be like this guy, things would be perfect for me, right? Yeah. And I think it's important for people like myself that came in after people like you to give you that recognition, right?
It's
for
still
doing the
weird.
work.
It's
Yeah.
always been weird. If I get done speaking at a meeting and people come up to me and say, "Oh, thank you so much," and want to talk, I'm just like, I don't even know what I said right now. I just kind of went into a trance and I said it, and now it's done. Let's go have some coffee. You know, I still struggle with that, but I think in an anonymous program, no one has the right to recognition.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, it does.
Like we have individual relationships where we believe in certain values. But as far as like, that's what's so cool is that I can go to a different part of the world and go to a recovery meeting and say, my name is Susan and I'm whatever. And they go, hi, Susan.
Yeah.
Because my name, my gender, my idealism, my politics, my sex, my sexual preference, my religious views, everything that most people consider important value systems to themselves are not important in 12-step recovery typically.
Yeah.
We make them important sometimes, but they're not. What's important, this is what I really appreciate, is what I really needed was a place that said the most important thing you'll ever do is not use today.
Yeah.
I needed it that simple. I needed the full focus on that. There's a guy that I really admire, one of my favorite speakers, and he says, you know, in a lot of these programs and a lot of these, you know, institutions, that who you name your God is most important, primary. But in certain 12-step fellowships, it's abstinence is most important. And then whatever comes after that, proceed with caution.
Yeah.
Right. But numero uno, we don't pick up. We don't abstinence. Right. Which in the culture that we have right now, it's very strange because there's so many supplements and substances being used as aids to help addiction and other mental illnesses and things like that. You know, I subscribe to the, you can't manipulate the words total abstinence.
Yeah.
That's what I believe in. And if I want to achieve something that those substances might give me, then I can either try to achieve them the hard way through prayer, meditation, and other avenues of that keep me abstinent, or they're not important enough for me to have in my life at this time. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. So it's recovery is defined by an active change in ideas and attitudes for me. And so when I look before you got here, I was like, man, what did I fucking get myself into? talking to these guys.
Yeah.
Right. this is weird. This is super freaking weird, right? And I'm journaling this. And because I do a journal, half of my journal is fear, the other half is faith.
Yeah.
You know, I just started this thing. It's helpful. But it's like, I'm fearful. It's like, who's going to listen to it? None of that shit is any of my business.
Right.
We're just having a conversation. The faith side of it is the universe wants us to have this conversation. And if it didn't, you would have got a flat tire.
Yeah.
Or he would have forgot the plug-in stuff.
Yeah.
Or I would have had, I don't know, some type of an emergency of some kind, and it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
You know, I simply do not believe in coincidence anymore, right? There's too much. My completely devastated family, all 6 of my parents, well, 5 of them, were at my wedding. My second marriage, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
You know, if you talk to people that have been married multiple times, it's hard to get everybody together again and, you know, without talking mess. And my family is well aware, and most people that were at my wedding know that you are not invited if you are not like with the shits. If you aren't spiritual in nature and able to hold yourself accountable for your own shit, don't even come. Right? That means my parents, they got a divorce and they can't stand each other. You know, you guys got to play nice or you don't show up. Yeah. And they did. And I think that a part of that stuff comes from me trying to make an amends to my dad for like 6 years. He just simply wouldn't let me until my brother had a baby, and he's sitting there with the baby, and I'm like, oh, he ain't going nowhere. I got him locked and loaded. Because I would try in the past, and he'd be like, let's go to Costco. Try to avoid it, Deflect it and avoid it. And I finally got him down, and, you know, we cried together, man, about how we treated each other. All he was trying to do was helping me, and I wouldn't let him. And he would get frustrated, and I would get frustrated. You know, all this stuff that we left undone. Recovery demands that I confront it and do something with it. Or you can live in misery in that area if you'd like. You know, I don't want to die with misery or regret. I want to do everything in my power. I've made amends to people that I haven't even heard. I've told them, hey, we're a thing now, and I'm probably going to hurt you. So I just want to let you know, and do it for me. I'm doing it from a place of sincerity because I know myself well enough to know that I'm arrogant, I'm self-righteous, I'm mean-tempered, I'm condescending, I just found this one out. I'm criticizing. I'm good at criticizing people, you know, and I don't want to hurt people. Yeah. But I know that part of being myself is letting myself be myself, finding the areas of my life that I need more work on through acting as myself. You know, I think there's a piece of literature that talks about, you know, people that care enough about recovery to tell you about yourself kind of thing, right? Like I got people like that.
Yeah.
And it's nice, man.
So that, you know what, it's funny because I keep thinking about that picnic you went to, right? And that guy that you talked to. Yeah. And he set you up. You know, what's your drug of choice? Right. Because it doesn't matter, right? No. What how can we help you, right? That's what matters.
Right. Come here and give me a hug.
And so like things like that, like the smallest little things for somebody else form who you are today, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, there was my first real NA meeting. Really, I didn't even talk about it, which I normally talk about all the time, but I went to this meeting and my mom said, if you're going to live with me, you got to go to meetings. So I'm going to this meeting.
And by the way, we don't speak for NA.
No. This is just my experience in trying to get clean and being somewhat successful with a lot of it, at least staying clean, but not, you know, doing it perfect. I don't know, you know, doing, staying clean perfect, but not living clean perfectly, you know, but I go to this meeting and, you know, these people are just strange. They look like they've all told on somebody, right? They all look like they owe somebody money. There's people like sad to be there, angry to be there, happy to be there. Everybody's hugging each other. Yeah. To make a long story short, you know, they ask for newcomers and my mom raises my hand, right? And the person in the front of the meeting, Normally what happens is people walk to the front of the meeting and get like a hug or a welcome key tag, things like that. I couldn't move, right? I was all the way in the back and I couldn't move. I mean, I walked into this meeting with this half-lit cigarette in my ear. You know what I mean? Like tripping. And this lady that was a different skin color than me, you know, that's how the disease of addiction is. It'll notice all the differences, right? Like she's this color skin, she's this sexual preference, and all these different things start going through my head, you know, which is messed up because I thought that I was a racist. I thought I was prejudiced. I thought I was a sexist person. I wasn't. I was extremely damaged. And I never really knew what I was or wasn't. You know what I mean? But the disease of addiction don't care what you are, what you aren't, or who anyone else is, or what. Any way it can grab you and punk you out by puppeting you, it will. And so it started on me, and I was like, oh, she's this color skin, she's this, right? And the worst thing about her is that she was really happy to see me. And I had never seen this woman before. Like she looked really excited about coming to hug me. Like I've never even seen that. In 15 years, I haven't even seen that. Somebody saying they're new from the back of the meeting and whoever's running the meeting, walking back there to meet that person where they're capable of being. And she did that for me, man. She hugged me. And I thought, you know, I'm just going to tap her and get off me, you know.
She didn't let you go, did she?
She didn't let me go at all, man. She snatched me up by the back of my neck and she held me real close into her neck pit and she started waving back and forth, kind of dancing, kind of caressing my back and telling me, we're so glad you're here. We love you. And I hadn't even felt that from my mom in years, from anyone. The closest I had been to somebody in that regard was a CO at Sandy Mush County Jail, yelling in my ear, don't move, with his knee in my back, right? That's about as close as I got to people, you know? And the disease of addiction, you know, I was freed in that moment. I went from tense and I relaxed the shoulders and I melted into this woman's arms. And it didn't matter that she was a woman. It didn't matter that her skin color wasn't mine. It didn't matter that her sexual preference. I felt genuine empathy from this person, you know, and then that felt like an hour, that hug. And just as quick as it came on, it left me. Because as soon as she started walking back to her seats, I was like, well, maybe she's not a lesbian. Maybe I can sleep with her and get her food stamp cards and move in and rent free. And, you know, all I got to do is sexual favors for her and I'll be good for the rest of my life. That's the kind of planning I did. That's the disease of addiction, trying to distract and deter me from a real, genuine experience, which still happens today. You know, it still happens today. I can miss the mark, you know, defining certain things like today, spirituality for me is my relationship to reality. So if I see something, if I think about who's going to listen to this, who gives a shit who's going to listen to this? That's none of my business. Yeah. Just be honest with EJ. Right?
Yeah.
That's but my distorted ideas of things, you know, the fear and the intimidation and the worry and the trying to, you know, be two people instead of one, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, whoever I can be to not take accountability for being myself. You know, that ain't cool.
Yeah.
You know, in the most important thing in most 12-step meetings is carrying a message. And the message has two requirements. One is that we are ourselves. And the second is that we tell the truth.
Yeah, that's awesome. That story about the first meeting, like that's
deal.
The meat and potatoes right there.
After that, I had rethought my whole life. Quickly awesome. And slowly and sporadically. And, you know, I mean, you got to think about it. I used crazy drugs for 13 straight years. I got clean when I was 21. But for 13 years, I didn't jump from like, oh, let me hit this little joint. No. I went from a joint to a gravity bong. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like, let's put some white stuff on top of that weed. Let's see what that does. I got these ADHD medications. Let's pop 6 of these and drink 4 beers and go skateboarding. Like crazy, you know? There's not a whole lot of people. One of my guys that I work with used with me when it was real dark. But there's another guy whose brother I was really good friends with in the Bay Area. And we went to a men's retreat a couple years ago. And he started talking about stories from when I was like 13, 14. And he was saying, you know, Jared would just hop on his skateboard and go so fast, like he was pissed off at the concrete. And out of nowhere, he would just stop, jump on top of a car, and smash the front windshield of that car. Whose car it was, no one knows. Doesn't matter. He was just chaos.
Right.
He'd fight cops. He would do whatever, right? And so, and then hearing that, I'm like, dude, I kind of forgot. You know what I mean? Like, I don't forget how it was. I definitely don't forget the consequences, right? But it's so cool to be removed from something to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not out here trying to burn buildings down anymore. I'm trying to, you know, trying to build. You know what I mean? I'm trying to understand certain things and be a part of the solution. And so, yeah, man, meetings have always been important to me. Service has always been important to me from the get, really. You know what I mean? It was something that I could understand. Recovery made sense. Hey, you're probably dishonest 90% of the time. Try and do 50. Yeah. 50% honest. If somebody asks you how you're doing, start telling them the truth. See how many friends you got. See which ones stick around and listen, because addicts go through shit.
Yeah.
We deal with obsession, compulsion, and total self-centeredness. So if you ask me how I'm doing and I ain't doing good, we might be sitting down for a while.
Yeah.
So either don't ask or, you know, keep it pushing.
Well, it's amazing, like all that stuff you're going through and where you're at, in a simple act of love and empathy.
Yeah,
can
shuts it
cut
all down.
through all that shit, right? And so, I know I'm starting to get a range of where we're at, and I think that's perfect. So let me ask you one last question, right? And you can go as far as you want, right? So somebody that's listening to this, they may have a problem. They may think they have a problem. They may really be struggling, right? But what would you tell somebody that's in the grips of this thing? Is there hope? What can they do? You know, what would you tell somebody that's hurting right now?
Yeah, it's just pretty simple. It's like, man, it's very hard to make excuses now. Addicts today are more fortunate. People that struggle today have so many different avenues to get help, any kind of help. There was a period in our history where addicts, there was no hope. There was an insane asylum, or you can maybe manipulate a family member to deal with your nonsense. Today, SLEs, treatment programs, you know, you can move to a different state and start all brand new, you know, even prison programs now. You know what I mean? It's insane. But if somebody was struggling and they were new, I often try and tell people, you have no idea the value you have. You have no potential clue how you can touch somebody's broken spirit because of your own broken spirit.
Right.
Because this is where we do that. We get to touch people that aren't used to being touched. And we get to kind of feel people that have never been understood. Right? I like the idea of we are taught how to love people that are unlovable until they can love themselves kind of idea, right? It's a huge responsibility. And not a whole lot of places are doing it, you know. Not to hate on any other subculture or entity that tries to help people with addiction, but I think there's a reason why most places send you to 12-step recovery.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure if you look it up on like some worldwide statistics, it's still the number one best way to find recovery. is 12-step recovery. I was talking with a buddy of mine. He said that terrorists are given 2 choices when they're caught. Be killed or start to go to NA meetings. This is happening on our planet. You know, and when he said that, I was just like, what a strange metaphor, because I'm a terrorist in my own right. I'm a terrorizer, you know, and I'm out here, you know, unconsciously destroying my world around me unintentionally. So if you're out there destroying your own world unintentionally or intentionally because you're just fed up, you know, and the pain is just overpouring, you know, sometimes it's hard to follow a treatment plan or to follow like some code of conduct according to a parole officer, right? But most of the time when you make it to a meeting, it's, hey, have some coffee, hang out, glad to see you. And then you get to make the decision for yourself. You know, no one's, there's no tests around here. There's, you know, pray, read, and write and figure it out for yourself and then wear it. Do your best to wear it. So, yeah, I know there's a lot of people suffering, but I also know that people aren't ready until they're ready. And I believe in autonomy, self-government, that if somebody's telling me they're not ready to quit, I'm not going to push the issue.
Yeah.
You know, I hope you don't die. That's what I'll say. You know, and if you ever really want to change, call and we'll go. But some people, you know, they play with it too long. And that reminds me of how grateful I am that I didn't skip a beat. When I took it, I ran with it hard. I still run with it hard, you know. But people, I sometimes think that more options make it more difficult for people to find the solution faster.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Definitely.
With like, you know, no offense, and I don't have any real opinion about it other than I would not subscribe to replacement drug therapies, only because I've heard people being on that stuff for like 20 years. And I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to me. Why are you on replacement drug therapy for 12 to 20 years? You know, and I don't know enough about it to really go into it, but I know for me that I had to face the pain of withdrawal or continue using. Those were my choices. And because they were so limited of choices, it wasn't difficult to make the right choice.
Yeah.
But if you tell me you can get Cali clean and smoke a bunch of marijuana while you're getting clean, or you can do the, you know, hallucinogenic route, you know, all this different stuff. If I had that many options in 2007,
You wouldn't be clean.
I don't think I would be clean, man. I think I would be experimenting and trying to justify the most outrageous sort of nonsense, you know. But I love newcomers, man. Because watching somebody come to life for the first time, like that woman did for me in that meeting, I can only imagine. Like, people have told me about that situation, but today, and I tell my sponsees, like, somebody called me the other day and told me, you know, he said he's relapsed a few times, you know, and he's like, I'm like, what did you get out of chapter 1? And he said, it feels like I'm reading it for me and not for other people. And I'm like, that's the hit, man.
Yeah.
Now you're moving in the right direction, because if you're reading literature to sound good to your peers, that shit's a wash. Doesn't matter. But if you're reading it and identifying what it means to you, and then you create your own unique song that is truly yours around it, and then you share it with another person, as quiet as it's kept, man, we save lives around here by simple shit. If I go to a meeting today and say, you know, I ain't been the fucking best husband, I need to do better, you know. Somebody in there might be altered by that.
Yeah.
And changed. I know I was changed by my sponsor's direction about being a man, ultimately, right? So we save lives, and we have a certain responsibility. Every single one of us own a stock in recovery shares, you know. Yeah. And we gotta honor it, in my opinion. I try not to judge other people for it. Try and just make it about me, but that's kind of been my belief, you know, that if we follow this way of living, it's gonna be beneficial to us, but the ways that it's beneficial to us cannot sustain itself. You have to share it with other people. You have to give it away. You know, it's not this idea that I did 6 months in a treatment center and now I get a certificate and my life's all better.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that simple. It's learn about the principles, practice the principles, completely fail at practicing the principles, learn how to practice them in your own right, and then you create a character, a person that somebody says, hey, can I interview you for a podcast? Or, hey, you know, apply for this job. That's when it becomes so attractive. It becomes practical. That's when it's almost like I needed this program. I needed these principles. I needed the fellowship, right? And then the fellowship flipped itself on me and said, no. You got a lot of work to do. Look at all these people that need you. And then as a consequence, it's like, most of the time with my line of work, I don't even really interview. I just tell them about how excited I am to help people. I just want to help people. I want to help schizophrenics. I want to help drug addicts. I want to help mothers. I want to help fathers. I want to help. The third step decision did not grant me what I get or don't get to do. It says, for me, I turn my will and my life over, and whatever the universe presents to me and my current understanding and ability to proceed in whatever direction. So if I see somebody that probably hasn't been told, somebody cares about you, you know, and if you need it to be me, it'll be me right now. You know, I can do that. That's cool. I couldn't do that 6 years ago. I couldn't walk up to a complete stranger and say, hey, did you know I care about you? I could do that today. You know, I was hearing the other podcast with Henry. I'm so proud of that dude. It's essentially the same thing. You know, I'm walking up to people that I don't know and saying, hey man, you're worth it. You want me to help you? Recognize that you're worth it? And usually when they do recognize it, everything changes. And they come to life for the first time. And we get to be a small part of that huge monument in their life. And we get to feel real good about it. But, you know, I really, you know, I'll say this and then I'll shut up. You know, I went to a world convention and one of the main speakers had said, you know, we're doing real good. We're in hospitals, we're in prisons, we're in all the countries and all this stuff. And he basically said, we ain't doing enough. We ain't doing enough because there's still people dying, unaware that they have a choice. And the only reason why any of us realize that we have a choice is because we got here. So we ain't done yet. Yeah. You know, we got more to do around here. And so I've always been motivated by that. I've always thought, like, don't subscribe to the idea that you've done enough. But I could do a lot in appreciating what I've done so far. Yes. And the journey, right? I could do better at that. But I've always been on the tip, like, I'm not, there's more work to be done, right? We got to keep pushing. We got to do more. And yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude.
Jared, thank you so much.
You're welcome,
We're
bro.
We're going to end this
like
we always do. So you owe me a
big
hug.
Hugs.
Big hugs. Oh. Jared, thank you, man. That was awesome.